Good afternoon. We are going to start with a work session. We have two topics, and after that, we will roll into an actual board meeting, because we just love being here. And so we're going to apologize in advance. Some of us are hungry, and so if we seem a little cranky, don't take it personal. We're going to start with the Annenberg Public Accountability for Charters presentation. I don't know if, Steve, if you would like to just give us a brief introduction to our facilitator of this discussion. Okay, so just as a point of reminder, you remember last board meeting, Ms. Shepherd did give notice of a motion for us as a board to adopt the Annenberg standards for charter school accountability. It was my request that we level the playing field on that so that everyone has an understanding and has an opportunity to answer their questions with regard to content, impact, viability, sustainability of such an approach. Please.
Are these mics on?
They might be. That's the one thing that's not in my job description.
Does that work?
There you go.
Does that sound like it's on?
Sounds like it.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Lee Dingerson, and I'm a consultant with the Annenberg Institute for School Reform at Brown University. I just wanted to thank you so much for inviting me to Nashville and for your commitment to strong public education in the schools that all our children deserve. 2 years ago, I facilitated a working group of parents, community organizers, leaders of youth-led organizations, and educators, looking at their experiences and their perspectives on the rapid expansion of charter schooling in their districts. The project was part of a partnership between the Annenberg Institute and Communities for Public Education Reform, or CEPR. The folks who came together for this working group were from some of the nation's largest charter school markets: New York City, Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and elsewhere. They included parents with children in charter schools, parents with children in traditional public schools, youth leaders working with students in both charter and traditional public schools, and representatives of community organizations. Many of the participants around the table were tired of the polarization of pro-charter and anti-charter, and we wanted to focus on the lived experiences of parents, youth, and communities in the 20 years of this experiment with privately managed schools. As we talked, these advocates for equity and excellence began recognizing each other's stories about students being discouraged from enrolling in charter schools, or students being pushed out, or school cultures that seemed almost intentionally humiliating. They talked about practices and cultures that create tensions between families, fueling a decidedly uncivil sense of winners and losers among parents who really just wanted the best for their own children. And then, of course, there were stories about scandals that raised questions in our working group about whether the freedom that we offer to charters in exchange for educational innovation might have been taken a little too far. These stories led the working group to discuss how local and state policy changes could help strengthen charter schools and ensure that they contribute to an enhanced public education as a whole and public school equity as they were meant to do. We also noticed something about language. Charter laws and advocacy groups talk a lot about accountability. When they do, it's usually about measuring the success of schools based on student test scores and graduation rates. And it's about a pledge that if schools don't deliver on the promise of higher test scores, they will be shut down. 201, our participants felt that the constant churn of schools opening and schools closing is a bad thing, whether they're traditional public schools or charters. We should be working together to improve schools and stabilize our communities, instead of thinking that it's okay to cut and run from a struggling school and struggling students. So the working group came up with the concept of public accountability, the idea that public schools need to be accountable in more ways than just for test scores or graduation rates. They need to be accountable to the taxpayers who fund them, to the districts that host them, and the communities in which they locate and those that they serve. And from that came the idea for the report released last September by Annenberg called the Public Accountability for Charter Schools. It offers 7 overarching standards that the working group felt defined public accountability. Under each standard, we included recommendations for specific policy changes that could be enacted by the state, by charter authorizers, by charter management organizations, or even by individual schools. These recommendations offer enforceable steps towards public accountability. I'm not going to go into each of the standards or recommendations tonight. What I thought I'd do is just highlight some of the reasons why adopting a set of standards and specific policies and practices will help strengthen Nashville's charter sector and, I think, your public schools as a whole. In our first standard, we focus on the importance of a unified system of schools that cooperates, collaborates, and communicates to ensure that charters enhance the system rather than compete within it. This is easier in states like Tennessee, where the primary authorizers are school districts themselves. But even district authorizers need policies that require collaboration, not just sharing best practices, but sharing and together analyzing demographic trends, geographic needs, and ensuring that charter growth doesn't have a negative or undermining influence on traditional public schools. I understand that a recent audit in Nashville found that charter growth is beginning to create financial stress on the Metro Nashville schools. This actually has been verified in a number of school districts by Moody's Investor Services. In some school districts, Moody's found, there seems to be a tipping point in charter market share, after which continued charter growth increasingly contributes to fiscal instability in the traditional host district. Certainly, where the majority of students continue to attend and are expected to continue to attend traditional public schools, this financial stress is counterproductive. That's why we recommend significant caution and close coordination between districts and charter incubators when it comes to promoting growth. One of the broadest concerns we heard has to do with transparency. Although charter schools are organized as private nonprofits, the fact that they are largely funded with public money and are explicitly created to serve a public good requires them to be held to the same standards of transparency as public sector entities. That means that the schools and the management organizations that they contract with need to allow public access to financial reports, policies, and contracts. Charters should explicitly be required to abide by conflict of interest standards that are applicable to public institutions. Way too much charter fraud can be avoided if governing board members are prohibited from having financial or personal interests in the school or in companies that have contracts with the school. This is crucial in our experience. We think parents, students, and educators have the right to a voice in their schools, and that schools have an obligation to honor and respect that voice. Parent choice, the right to be consumers in a public education system, is good, but it's not what we mean by parent involvement or parent empowerment. Charters, our working group agreed, need to open up real avenues for parents, teachers, school staff, and even students to practice democratic engagement. And it turns out that schools do better when they do. The standards call for explicit policies prohibiting enrollment barriers, such as requiring parents to sign contracts or volunteer at the school, or requiring Social Security cards, materials fees, or other things that might deter families. Many school administrators probably don't even realize that these types of practices are exclusionary. It needs to be explicit. And there should be an ombudsman or a similar entity with the authority to investigate when parents believe that their child might have been inappropriately deterred from entering a school or pushed out unfairly. These are all examples of public accountability that are addressed in the report. Now a word about oversight. Earlier this week, a report was released that identified over $200 million in charter fraud and waste in just 15 states. That's less than half the states across the country that have charter school laws. The report found a number of reasons for this. One is that the aggressive drive to expand charters in the name of increasing school choice has allowed us or has caused us to let down our guard. And too many bad actors have gotten into the barrel. And the rapidly increasing markets in many cities have simply outstripped the capacity of authorizers to provide adequate oversight. Expansion for the sake of expansion has had negative consequences. Nashville, as you all know way better than I do, has been spared the worst of these embarrassments. But that doesn't mean that you won't face them as you continue to support a vibrant charter sector. As the number of charters grows, the possibility for abuse grows with it. The Center for Popular Democracy that developed this week's report found that virtually no state has in place the kind of protections that would catch some of these cases of fraud before thousands of dollars have walked out the door. Most charter schools follow the rules, but it takes only one scandal to start shaking the public's trust. Finally, before I close and we can go to some questions, I wanted to commend you for considering this resolution tonight and let you know that other jurisdictions are moving towards increased charter accountability as well. Even before the Annenberg report, concerns about public accountability in the charter sector have been raised in city after city, state after state, and even by the Departments of Education and the Departments of Justice. We're confronting a challenge in this 20-year-old experiment. The potential for a loss in public trust if some of these bad practices aren't addressed with more than good intentions and non-binding suggestions. Action is being taken in many places. In Illinois last year, several accountability laws were enacted. One addressed funding procedures to ensure that per pupil funding is adjusted throughout the school year according to enrollment counts. Another addressed enrollment concerns and the use of public funding for marketing or advertising. Conflict of interest provisions were extended to charters. In Delaware, just this week, the governor signed HB 56, which imposes a moratorium on all new charter schools, while plans are developed to ensure that charters won't undermine public districts. New York and Massachusetts have prohibited charter contracts with for-profit corporations. The California General Assembly this year is debating a package of bills that would codify almost every one of the Annenberg standards. We're tracking public accountability bills this year alone, introduced in New Mexico, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Florida, Minnesota, and New Jersey. At the local level, charter operators and advocates in New York this month released a critique of charter schools that refuse to backfill empty seats. This example of charters themselves stepping up and addressing an issue that's been debated across the country speaks to the integrity of many schools and networks intent on holding each other accountable. Authorizers are stepping up too. Last year in Philadelphia, the School Reform Commission refused to renew a set of charter school contracts until identified barriers to enrollment were eliminated. In short, public accountability for charter schools, just like June in the musical Carousel, is busting out all over. Nashville is right to take this step to ensure that you have protections in place, not just against financial mismanagement or fraud, but also against violations of the public trust that you and that all of us place in our charter schools. And I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Okay, Ms. Spear?
Yeah. Thank you, Lee, for that wonderful overview of your work. I just want to say that I have received over 100 letters from community people in support of these standards. And I've only received one against it, and that was from Lead Academy, who said that they go above and beyond the standards. But it would make sense to me that if they go above and beyond the standards, they would support these, this resolution. Dispensing public funds requires oversight, and that's our job, is to have oversight of public funds. And I hope that we'll pass this resolution tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Pinkston?
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for such a clear articulation of what these standards are. This is an ongoing process to educate people, as you know, about how these independent schools work and the opportunities and the challenges with them. It wasn't so long ago in this community, about a year and a half ago, that people were still saying they don't cost anything, that the money follows the child, and that's the way public education works. But now I do think, because of the audit that you mentioned and some other analysis that's been out there, people do now understand that the money follows the child, but the fixed costs do not. And so this, being able to have this public conversation is a continuation of the ongoing education of folks in this community. Question I've got is, we had, and I'm going to kind of set the context and then ask the question. Last month, Teach for America attempted to pull out of its core members of several charter schools in the community underneath something called the Republic Charter School chain. That has not yet happened, but the claims that we were hearing, some of us were hearing on the board, is that there were abusive, hostile working conditions for teachers in those schools. What, if anything, in the Annenberg standards would provide the kind of visibility that we would need as a board who funds these schools to understand how they're operating at a personnel level? I went through the standards and I didn't see anything that immediately spoke to that, but is there something there that I missed?
That's interesting. I think one of the provisions, one of the recommendations that we make has to do with whistleblowers and protection for educators or school staff that, call something out. So that would be one area that would come to mind. We are supportive of educators in charter schools being able to have the right to collectively bargain if they so choose, or if there is a union formed in their building. That's what's coming to mind.
Well, the whistleblower thing helps. I'll go back and look for that, because that's how we have known about it, but the whistleblowers are scared to step forward and put their name to it for the obvious reasons. So I think that's good. I'll go back and reread. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Pierce?
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I have a few questions here. As far as I know, looking through the standards, there are quite a few, at least here. I'm not sure if you're specific with Tennessee law in terms of taking this study and making it very applicable to Nashville. And that's kind of what my hope is as we adopt accountability standards, because I don't think that anyone would dispute the need for transparency and accountability. And I do like that Ms. Shepherd has incorporated into all schools, not just charter schools, that these would apply to, whether it's whistleblowing. We have plenty of fear in our own district as well. So, but I am curious as to the state law, and then even for Mr. Henry and the teachers union who have, brought you here today and kind of leading the campaign, what kind of collaboration was done with our charter leaders? Like, to me, to really make this something unifying that we're going to embrace and work together on, I'm wondering if that piece is missing from even our commitment to community engagement in terms of working with you and charter leaders and what we're already doing, and how we can really come around this, embrace this together to say these are the standards that we all want to adhere to. So I'll start with the state law one. It seems like there are quite a few in here that are contrary to Tennessee state law.
As I described, we created the standards very explicitly, sort of cross-country, right? We had folks in the room from 6 or 8 or 9 different states. Every state law is a little bit different, and we completely recognized as we were sort of talking over the period of months that we were meeting and developing the standards, that some of them would be more applicable in some states than others, that what we were creating, or what we hoped we were creating, was kind of a baseline for good practices, for taxpayer protection, for encouraging not just excellence but equity in public schools. And so I think probably, and I think this is really up to y'all to answer, I think probably as you move forward to implement the standards, if you decide to pass the resolution, then the implementation is where you really drill down and say, well, state law already requires this, so we can put that in, or we don't need to put that in, or state law is contradictory to this, so we really can't do that. I mean, that's the implementation process, and I think that's where the specifics, not just of Tennessee, but of Davidson County, come into play.
Yeah, I'd love to see us develop this as a very Nashville-focused resolution.
Sure.
Okay, Ms. Kim?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction. It seems that it would be difficult to adopt the standards as is, given that a number of the suggestions, provisions are contrary to state law. Although I'm sure that we can all agree that accountability matters, as does transparency for all schools. I would say charters, traditional schools alike. Ms. Shepherd, is your thought that we should then take this into committee to then discuss, like, what is applicable, what is not contrary to state law, what is?
And as we flesh it out, we will do that in a policy areas, yes.
Is anyone else before we do seconds? This index finger here. There you go.
Just, on the issue of what's legal under state law and what's not, in the legislature, whenever they pass a bill, there's always something in it called a severability clause. So if they discover later that something's not allowed under the Constitution or under existing code, then that piece of it severs out. So that's kind of a built-in protection. And I think that, if we want to agree when we get into debate that we entertain severability when we encounter something that's not consistent with state law, then I think that's fine. But I don't.
Just make a motion for
That's
those that are applicable.
Sort of standard process. Thank you.
Anyone else has any questions, comments? Ms. Shepherd, you want to make a statement?
Thank you, Lee, for coming out. I really do appreciate it, and thank you, Stephen, also for help getting her here. And I think it's been very helpful to my colleagues and I, got the document several weeks ago so we could read it, and then we got a copy of the motion yesterday or today so that we could, chew on that for a little bit before we, had your presentation tonight. And it was very thoughtful and very well spoken as to all the details that went into that, to the study. And I enjoyed reading the study, actually. It had it made some really good points, and it gave some really good examples as to what we, need to be cognizant of as we're going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next, we will have a dashboard presentation. Ms. Laura?
Hello.
Hey.
Is this the?
That's it. No, that's not it.
Thanks. Technical assistance here.
There you go. Yeah, on top. That's it.
Okay, here we go. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here.
Long time no see.
I know.
I know. Go ahead.
I know. But I was in front of you a couple of months ago, I think it was, talking about the dashboard. I hope all of you saw the information and the different types of dashboards and things that I sent out, or that Dr. Register and his folks sent out for me earlier in the week. And I've got all of that. That was our agenda. That's what we're going to stick to. So I'm not going to go revisit all of what I told you at the last, when I kind of gave the presentation about where we were and the process by which we usually create dashboards. To make sure that you all do realize, in one of those attachments that I sent is the existing school board dashboard, the one that was created with the feedback that we did get. Many of you were not school board members at that time, so it is good to revisit that. But rather than give a presentation tonight, what we're going to do is really kind of go through the beginning of the process by which we would create a dashboard. And that actually, it's a good thing this is a work session, because it's going to require, I think, you all to kind of have discussion with each other and ask questions of me to try to answer this main question is, what is the purpose of your dashboard? And some of those ancillary questions that we actually want to talk about, what will we, or you as a board, use it for? This is part of the requirements gathering process to really craft something that will not just house a bunch of data, but will serve you in your informed decision-making process is our goal. So knowing what you're going to use it for will help us determine what needs to be on it, how it needs to be displayed, how often it needs to be updated, and so forth. So another question that kind of helps us think about what the purpose of the dashboard might be is, what are we responsible for monitoring? So you as a board, and dashboards are usually used for a monitoring purpose. Oh, that's not even big enough to see. And just to remind you about the definition of a dashboard and the purpose specifically of a dashboard, this was from your last presentation as well. And is a definition by Stephen Few, an expert in this field. A dashboard is a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives, consolidated and arranged on a single screen so the information can be monitored at a glance. So some of the key words in there that you all need to think about is that is a visual display of the most important information. What is that most important information for you all as a board that you need to be working with regularly? Not necessarily the things that are interesting and you want to delve into. We have a lot of that, and that's going to be available to you as well. But specifically, what is the most important information that you need to be working with? The next part of this is the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives. What is the objective? Again, what is the purpose of this dashboard? That will help us get you the right data at the right time for the use by the board that is your intended use. So I'm going to go back up to our little questions here. This is where I kind of turn it over to you all. And Madam Chair, you may want to.
I got this. All right. So as you all know, we've been talking about a dashboard. I've been on the board almost, 7 years? 7 years. And so we've been given, I think, an opportunity with Laura's yeoman's work to get a first pass at one. It's been sent out. She's asked for responses. We haven't given her any, so just why I've asked her to come here. So given discussions that we've been having around literally what all boils down to what our responsibilities are, and you asked a question, Laura, and if anyone disagrees, please chime in, but last time I checked, our job description was to set the budget, monitor the performance of the district via the director, and then hire a director of schools. 3 things, right? So that second, you okay? Did I miss something? That's the one, and set policy. So I take the hire the director out, because the 3 kind of fits with my theme here. We hire a director, but obviously set policy as well. So this dashboard allows us to keep an eye on the budget, as well as monitoring the performance of the district. So those are the kinds of things that I would think, as a board, we would like to see on the dashboard. but it also helps to drive the discussions at this table. And I believe if the dashboard is appropriately established and set at the right level. And so I'll tell you that when we get together with Dr. Register to set the agenda, this topic always comes up about where we are and what we think we want to see on it. So I know that we've had some input and written comments about what we would like to see on it from the lens and perspective of what our responsibilities are. And again, I think with a dashboard, and I've used the phrase here since sitting in this seat constantly about needing to change the conversation. And so we then have a tool whereby we can set agenda and conversation topics that keep us in the lanes that we were elected to be in, regardless of what else we think our roles may be. And other things that we find ourselves engaged in within our respective districts and within the community, our lanes are clearly defined. And so this is a tool that helps, again, to guide me, along with my vice chair and the director, to establish the agenda. So for me, the dashboard brings transparency to those things via the monitoring and budgeting legs of our responsibility, where we need to start having some conversations. So I don't know if you want to get into, if anybody else wants to chime in on what they believe the purpose of the dashboard should align with our responsibilities. But whenever you're ready to get into some feedback on the one that you've sent to us and those data elements that are there, we can go there. We're good? All right.
Okay, so we're about transparency, right? And setting the agenda. Now, when you all think about setting the agenda for your meetings, this is where you kind of need to look at what the dashboard is, because if it is specifically around topics that are set up based on what your monitoring schedule is, we may have multiple dashboards that are geared toward getting you the right information on specific topics.
So I want you to put out of your mind
Okay.
the monitoring calendar.
Okay,
Please put that out of your mind.
okay, we got it. It's out.
Makes your job a whole lot easier.
Okay, so, so do you all, I mean, if you were to give me a sentence of what is the purpose of the dashboard, other than, transparency, so answer to some of these questions, how will you use it as a board? Will you use it at board meetings? Is it to just set agenda? Is it the three of you?
So I think it's the first two things. And if anyone, again, disagrees, please chime in, because we're going to live with whatever comes here. I think it is part of setting the agenda.
Okay.
And I think it is something that needs to be available. If there's anything that I will not pass out and find a piece of paper in front of my seat, it would be the dashboard.
Okay.
And when I come to sit here, and how often that needs to happen depends on, again, the data that we settle on. If it's not going to change
Right.
within a 2-week period, probably has no value to be there.
Yep.
But, on whatever schedule we determine is important, to refresh it and make it available.
And that was going to be another one of
Right.
the points I was going to bring up is we have a lot of that summative reporting, things that are collected and reported on. TCAP scores from last year don't change.
Right.
They are what they are, and we can show them on a dashboard, but they will be the same. So it's not monitoring the TCAP scores. That may be a reference point, but, so just kind of keeping that in mind about what data we actually collect. Because if you're looking at monitoring trends, means we have a process and a procedure for actually collecting data that you want to monitor. And that's fine if there are points or data that you want to collect that we don't, but then we'll have to go back and look at processes and ways of actually doing that kind of work. So I'm going to move on. Here were just some of the guiding documents that you all were kind of referenced to. Our strategic plan is one of those areas. The director's evaluation is another one of those areas where you all have kind of defined measures and collected and reported. So just some feedback on what we currently have. So our current school board dashboard, did anybody have any comments?
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
We're ready for that.
Oh, you're good. Okay, so are we done?
No, we're ready to give you comments.
Oh, you're ready to give me comments, great. Hey, shoot, I was actually trying to figure out how I could kind of put them up here, but now I'm in presentation mode. Does somebody want to help?
Hit escape,
But then you can't see it.
and then you need to help her with the F4 key to share the screen.
see, I can see what, you know.
I know,
what,
but if you hit a function, I think it's at F4, you can go to dual display. Unless you've already
Them to
broken
be
it,
able to
and then
see
that
what
won't
I
work.
I am, my specialty is data,
We
not
got you.
necessarily
Good.
technology, so.
Trying to figure out why it won't toggle up now. Where's your module
My what?
at? The slides.
Okay. All right. So, hey, Fred, can you take some notes from me? Well, okay. So, I'm going to listen and bring a piece of paper, but, because I plan on using my worthless computer. So, yes, thoughts on existing dashboards. Do you want to start with the school board dashboard specifically?
You wanna go?
Because I did send a variety of dashboards, and let me just kind of say the ones that I sent that had a lot of information, the attendance, discipline, scores for different things, some assessment things. Wherever you saw DEA, we do plan on adding the NWEA when that is implemented. That's the new assessment tools. So DEA is not being consistently collected throughout the district. We still have some schools that are using it, but not everyone. So we do plan on when we get a new district benchmark assessment, that is going to be on the dashboards in the place of where you see DEA now. And those are used by schools. You saw the cluster dashboard, which is used a lot by our cluster support teams to really get a sense of what's going on at a cluster level and how things change over time. Those are drill downable to a school level, so then you can see schools. You all, did anybody actually go in and go into the data warehouse to look at them yet? Because you have access to do so. Did you? Good. All right. That's great. Because once you're in there, you can, select and choose from multiple dashboards. Those give you kind of a snapshot of what principals, district leaders, other support folks view as those things that they're monitoring daily. We also, I put in that folder, the attendance and discipline dashboards. One of the things that tends to happen is you see just one indicator. It could be the number of out-of-school suspensions for the district. And that's great if you're monitoring it, but you all do have areas that you represent. So I thought if you were able to see that you have also access to the attendance dashboard, that if you were interested in the topic of attendance, we have one that breaks down a lot of information into, a lot of different buckets. So you got that as well to show that sometimes the answer isn't just one dashboard, but it could be access to multiple and mixes. So with all that said, are we ready? No? Okay.
I actually brought up here's the attendance dashboard pulled up if you want to plug it in.
Yeah, so not yet. So I think we want to start with the sample one you gave of a high school, the 1, 2, 3 high school dashboard. And so just to make kind of put some context, and if anyone else wants to chime in. Again, with respect to what our responsibilities are, I would like to see us elevate the data. Okay? I don't think it would be appropriate to put 157 pieces of paper
Right.
in front of us every board meeting, because this is not the place, and I'll say it, pretend I said it 14 more times. This is not the place to discuss what's going on at a specific school, unless it's been an issue that needs to be elevated.
Okay.
We need to learn to use our committees better. We need to learn to use our director of schools better to hone in on particular specific school level issues. So from the perspective of a dashboard and monitoring at a larger population level, I'm thinking it is a district level dashboard that gives us data appropriately broken down at those cohorts and levels that we need to have visibility into. And then potentially tier level dashboards, so it's not a high school, but a dashboard of our high school's performance, middle school performance, and then the third tier of elementary schools, and which I don't know if we want to group pre-K into that, but since they're new, maybe we pull those out for now. And then, because I don't know what kind of data, given they're
We don't have as
different.
much data
Right.
on pre-K as we do.
So maybe it's a different level.
But we do have assessment stuff on pre-K.
Exactly, so we know we got that Vanderbilt presentation, there is some data, and so it's a different format, and so it feels different. So I think pre-K would be its own. And then the last one we said was our priority schools. So those, to me, are the big buckets that we should be looking into, monitoring trends, and then we can get into specifically what those windows are on each of those dashboards. That helps us, again, ensure we're being fiscally responsible, ensuring that the goals that we have established via our strategic plan, whatever it looks like, today versus 6 months from now, however that happens, but via our strategic plan, where we are with trending towards meeting those goals.
Great. Okay.
Mr. Pinkston has something to add?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about kind of what it looks like looking at a dashboard as a board member and seeing, high rates of absenteeism at a school, and then like, what do I do with that?
Right. That's what I said, I wanted school level.
I'm going to call the director of schools and start questioning, high absentee rates within an individual school building. That's clearly not what board members should do. But I am interested in seeing monthly reports on how recruitment is going at high quality teacher prep programs. And I am interested in seeing monthlies about what's going on inside the principal corps, which I believe is the highest lever of change that we've got in the system. So are we at a place in the development of all this where we can get some insight into what's going on in those processes? I know that's not like data warehouse type information, but just kind of generally speaking, as an organization, are we able to track that kind of stuff?
We do actually have some staff information in the data warehouse. It's viewable by specific stakeholders, mostly our human capital folks. We can look at what we have that can kind of get you a little bit what you need. So if I heard you right, you're looking at something that would allow you to monitor the recruitment of high-quality staff throughout the year?
Yeah, I think I'll pull this back to our board retreat last September. One of the things that we all agreed on is that we would like to see a heavier emphasis placed on recruitment and retention of highly effective educators. And I think, in theory, that's easy to articulate, but harder to track. But if you could help us think through ways to look at that on, and I think I don't know enough about the recruitment cycles, particularly for new teachers, people who are coming out of college. But I assume that that effective organizations are doing year-long recruiting, and therefore I would love to see those kind of reports on a monthly basis if they're available.
Okay. So what we do have, right now are basically demographics of our district. We have, experience level, how many we have, where, at what experience level, what their education level is, how long they've been with the district, how long they were educators in other places. So we have a lot of that information. I think it may just be, I'll kind of take that away, talk with my folks, and see if we can come up with something that we can create that you could at least respond to, and then we can make adjustments from there. But we do have some information about staff, and it does change at certain times of the year. I might get with the human capital folks and see where the critical times of the year, where the majority of the change happens. But just like we have student turnover, we have staff turnover throughout the year, so.
Yeah. So again, that's a district-level data point that would be
Yes.
be valuable. Anything else, Mr. Biggs?
Some of the data that we do have that would fill that, I would think would be, and I know we have it, vacancy rates and hiring numbers on a monthly basis, looking at turnover and looking at turnover by demographics, how many years' experience do the teachers have? We have all of that.
Yeah, so this is what I say. I know that there's data coming out of your ears, right? So, John used to get a big kick out of coming out here sauntering. There he is over there sauntering up to the podium. Now I got all the data. Y'all got, yeah, all right, right. What I'm interested in are those things that because eventually, right, we're talking about an impact on education. So there's a lot of data points. So I think what I would look for is that your recommendation to us is these are the things that we believe make a in the performance of our students. So is it how long that person has been here? Is it whether they were highly qualified when they're, so those things. And then we would look to you to say, what are those data elements of the 19 pieces of data you can give me on a teacher or a core of teachers? What matters most and has the biggest impact on student performance? At least that would be our first pass. So this isn't going to be a done when she, takes our feedback and comes to us. We now look at it and say, to Will's point, can I have a board-level discussion about the data that's in front of me?
I just have one other personal request. The other thing that the board has, I think, almost unanimously, if not unanimously, said that we want to prioritize in the future is pre-K investment and expansion. So if we could, add in something that lets us analyze what the waiting lists are looking like, I think that helps inform strategic planning and budgets and other things, so.
Yeah, so on that pre-K only dashboard,
Yeah.
what's our waiting list
Yeah.
currently, and what's it projected to be? So I think we
Right.
need to do a better job, and, Will has suggested this, I guess for a couple, since the day you got on the board, is that we can start budgeting a couple of years ahead as opposed to for the, imminent future. So if we can start to get trending and projections in the pre-K space, that would be helpful as well, because there aren't going to be too many more grants of $300 million coming our way. Awesome. Go ahead. She needs to be live. She got mouths all over the place.
Well, I think just even backing up, coming across a will of the district-wide level that may not be typical is even adding on to that the professional development that we're training and offering the teachers. Would just be good to know what are the things that we are addressing and what we think will help our students. And then I've got I get down some specific ones too in terms of if we're looking at our budget. What are those areas if we could see some of it might become school by school, like which ones have reading recovery, and then we'll be able to really see if this is a place we need to push harder on based on what we're seeing. And then even technology. I feel like I get a lot of complaints on my schools we don't have enough technology, but we do $20 million a year in capital more or less. So some of those, but it's getting specific.
Yeah, so here's
trying to
this.
figure out though, what are we budgeting for?
Right, so I think that's a different discussion and a different piece of insight. And we've been talking about this too, is how do we measure the impact of the initiatives that we're funding? So I think that's maybe even a different work session, because we're funding technology, and if we believe it's the right thing to do, are we at the right level that we need to be at all our schools? We're funding reading recovery. If we believe, what is the impact it's having? And are we prepared to expand that? Are we fiscally prepared? So I think I don't know that it's this dashboard. It's data that we have to find a way to get some visibility into. So it's just going back to, again, another question that's been on the floor for years, is do we monitor the impact of the initiatives we fund? One of the discussions that we had at a presentation in Salt Lake City was this whole concept of getting entities to invest in initiatives in the district, right? Am I saying this right? Invest in, Jay facilitated that panel discussion for us, getting investors to invest and, I don't know. Pay for success. Paying for success. So, we'll pay for it if you meet these metrics. If not, you've got to give us our money back, basically, is what it comes down to. So we don't do a good job of the ROI types of discussions. And so I think that's a different matrix of, I need to see, based on initiatives down here, what needle are we moving, expected to move, and are we moving it?
And that is one of the areas that is very difficult, not just for our district, but for any district. But and when you get into the topic of principal autonomy, where every school is allowed to basically, have their own programs and do their own thing, tracking what students are involved in what programs and how they're faring, just the collection of that information can be challenging. You need to have data systems that track programs. You also have to have staff that is willing to enter and keep that up to date. A kid came in, they're now in this program. They were here for 10 days, they're now in this program.
Well, the other point
So there are challenges there with the collection.
Well, that
as
brings up
well.
another point too. So since we first started discussion of dashboard, now we're at the level of school-based budgeting. So again, we have to understand that we're funding a school that, to Laura's point, may choose to participate in particular initiatives. And if we are going to go this route of principal autonomy, we need to be very clear on what it is we're monitoring, or what we're able to monitor. So I'm going to use reading recovery as an example. If reading recovery remains a district-level funded program versus I'm going to give you $500, and if you choose to participate in reading recovery, something totally different, right? So so I think we need to be more aware of, these are still some of those things, as Chris said in his presentation, there are some things that will still remain funded and required at a district level, right? Did I recall that right? So if reading recovery is one of those, then it makes sense. But if reading recovery is an optional thing done inconsistently across 100 schools, then our monitoring of it becomes subjective, and we can't make any predictions or talk about any trends or anything specific. So I think we just need to be careful that when we start talking about, I'd like to see data for programs, do we need to redefine that to be those programs that we know are required and in place across the tier? So I think that's a question we have to ask, because the discussion about it has to be then school level, and I don't believe it belongs here. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a,
Yes.
yeah, Ms. Spearing?
To Mary's point, I've got 2 points I want to make, but to Mary's point about professional development, that may not be in our purview. However, I think it would be a great thing to be able to see. These are the professional development options, and a rating by teachers on those. How many people have gone through that particular professional development activity, and how teachers have rated them, because that seems very unclear to me. The other thing is, I think there's a difference between student achievement and student learning. Student achievement to me is a number on an achievement test score. Student learning is much broader. And it looks, the WDEA, is that what you called it?
NWEA.
Okay, that's one thing. How about, could we use something like the text level reading?
We actually, and text level reading is on the elementary reports.
Okay.
The dashboards.
And the other thing that interests me is, we know that we have kids moving in and out of schools, and some of that's because of mobility, some of it's because of choice. Is there any place on the dashboard where we can see why, not only how many students are leaving, but why they're leaving and why they're returning?
We have an entire, a couple of reports actually dedicated to that topic. This is one of those areas where once it isn't an easy to show trend on a dashboard. And again, if you're looking at the district level, we can show how many students moved or a percentage of the population in a month. That would be something to measure. To get down into the analytics of mobility and who's moving where and why, we have a few advanced reports where you can look at a school, see how many students have come in and from where. What schools were the highest, where they left and came in, and also how many left and where they went based on where they left. They left this school and went to the most common places were these things. So we have some advanced analytics around that, definitely more complex than you would want to put on a dashboard, because it is its own huge report, which we can provide to you. But again, it's gets into that, what's going to be useful as that snapshot monitoring piece that kind of trips you off to say, this is outside of an acceptable range.
So I don't know how we define an acceptable range, but I do think from the mobility perspective, well, my question would be, I don't think anything here yet, is that on a district dashboard, or on the tier level, so if we look at high school, middle, and elementary, could you give me a mobility rate for the tier?
Yep.
Right? And then the top 5 reasons that people come in, or the top 5 reasons that people leave?
Yes.
So that could be a dashboard window, my guess is, as opposed to,
And we do track the reason for withdrawal from the previous school.
Sure.
We don't track the reason coming in.
That's fine. So I think that the withdrawal is the one that we would probably have more interest in anyway.
And the same thing for teachers. Why are they leaving? I mean, it's, and
Yeah, so that
can
would be the
complex, so
retention.
that might be the first 5.
Yeah, so top 5 reasons.
Yeah. but to have more of a sense, it seems like we don't have a
Yeah, I would need to
Picture.
get with the human capital department. The consistency of, exit interviews and, getting that information and storing it, we don't have a human capital management system right now. We use EBS, which is a Metro government-owned system, which is used for payroll. So we don't have the ability to kind of add our customized fields and just collect. So data that is collected is anything outside of the payroll system, and EBS as a Metro system is done on spreadsheets for the most part. So that is one of those areas that the reason why teachers left, I know I've heard Susan and Katie talk multiple times about we need to do more of that and do it better, but I am not sure about the extensive data we have to actually be able to have enough to look at trends at this point. But that will be on my to-do list, but let's manage expectations on that one.
Okay. Would you like some water, because Ms. Kim's about to start?
She knows I am like itching.
Yeah, we've
Itching.
been talking about this for
I am
years.
itching. Literally. So I think the best summative dashboard that we have is, of course, the APF. The one thing that I would suggest that we add to that, so when it comes out yearly, is the costs per pupil at each school. Because that, what's interesting, I think, from a governance perspective, is the intersection of achievement and what we want to see and what it's costing us, because we're ultimately responsible for then managing the budget. And there's wide variation. And I think that those, the things divorced from each other, I think cause weirdness down the road in the system. And so I would love to see that added. One other sort of general thought is, to the degree we can get longitudinal data, so year-over-year data, that's the best, unless there's goals that we're measuring against. Because it's not just the data by itself in a vacuum is, I don't think, necessarily that helpful. So if you know that, for example, in this dashboard, the mobility rate is 28%, I just don't know if I'm supposed to be happy about that or sad about it. And so what's relevant is you have to have something that you're anchoring off of. Either it's because we set a goal and we said mobility should only be 20%. Then I look at 28 and I'm thinking, that's terrible, so we need to do something. Or if the goal is 30% because we're trying to get it down from 40, well, 28, that's pretty good, so we should all be happy. And so I think that's just a rule of thumb as we develop all these dashboards. There has to be some anchor point. Yeah. Whether it's a goal or whether it's year-over-year data or something to anchor off of, so we can actually, because that's the whole point, is should we be happy or sad? Should we be urgent about changing it, or should we be celebrating? So, and then one other large, or big point is just, this is building on Dr. Gentry's earlier point around, we have a gajillion data points. I think it's only interesting if the data holds predictive power. So if again, sort of if you're in a vacuum and you're just looking at a data point, if that data is not correlated to anything that we care about in terms of outcomes, then I'm not interested at all in seeing it. Whereas if we know that mobility is important, I would advocate that we do include mobility. By the way, I would split that out by tier, yes, and also by charter, so that you can see everything apples to apples. And then the other thing too is chronic absenteeism, and I would by tier as well. And then over time. So again, it's one thing if you know that the rate, 20% of your kids are chronically absent, that sounds bad to me, to just in a vacuum. But then again, if it was 30% last year and we got it down to 20, that's pretty good. I think that we should figure out what's going on there so that we can continue to continuously improve. Or if it was 10% last year and 20% now, then that seems bad. So things like that would seem important. The discipline stuff that was included here, I admit, some of this, I know that, is it the conditions prejudicial to good
Yeah,
order?
that's what the dumping ground.
That is a hilarious,
You
category, by the way. Oh, it doesn't
Okay,
exist
yeah, 'cause
anymore.
we
Okay.
we had a good
Well,
laugh.
it's
Especially on the next page when it's
actually a
46,000 of
state,
them.
we didn't make that one up. It is a state code, and it does exist. What we have done is actually broken it down and linked it to that one that we still have to report.
Okay, because that stuff also it's sort of interesting, but I can't do anything with it because it's such a dumping ground, so it's the same thing. If it's there's no predictive power, sort of interesting, but I'm not.
Before you leave the
Maintenance
page.
department went through that category and created subcategories
Okay,
of that dumping ground
yeah,
so that we can more specifically drill in the newer data.
Got it. Out-of-school suspension, I'm very interested in this by race and class, because as we know, there are lots of studies out there nationally that suggest that there are differential discipline practices that are applied to different groups of students that are inequitable. And so I'm very interested in equity there and making sure that different groups are not being treated differently based on background. So that one is relevant. I think the other thing, I remember Fred once, for the very first time I ever got into data warehouse, I was like giddy, and he showed me one of the, it was fascinating to see, and this is a summative, I'm guessing a summative report, but the intersection of grades and TCAP scores. So it's like, so if this is about transparency and providing information to like parents and, everyone about how kids are doing, grades are the best proxy on a sort of day-to-day basis. But that's only good if they're accurate. And what was interesting is like seeing patterns where some teachers would give out lots and lots of A's, but then all their kids are below basic on the TCAP. That is odd. I mean, something does not fit in that pattern. Or the flip, it's like a teacher maybe who, I'm making this one up, I doubt this exists, but it could be someone who gives out lots of C's and D's, but all their kids are proficient or advanced. That's also kind of odd. But just like, it seems like that is a leading indicator, which then brings me into like, well, maybe that's not the best daily leading indicator, but I'm interested in leading indicators. Like what would indicate, like something in the mix suggests that something is off. And I do think that parents are so reliant on grades as like the proxy. I would be, of just this is my best source of knowing how my kid is doing. And it's very sad then if a child is getting A's the entire year, but then they end up below basic, that is just wrong. So I would be interested in seeing those differentials. I remember an interesting other, you look like you're about to.
I was, because I want to go back to what Dr. Gentry said. We have those reports, and the principals use those reports, and they use them to work with teachers specifically to do what you just said. At what level would it be useful to you as a board member? Because based upon what Dr. Gentry said, I'm not sure that the level that would be useful for a principal would be the same level that would be useful to you. So maybe school level or grade level or something.
We're talking about this one, the grades and
Tier level, I guess that was the question that was.
Yeah, just
Yes, I
tier
think it's
level.
at the tier level subgroup.
Yeah.
Right, so we talked about district, tier level, including pre-K in its own tier.
Yeah, only tier.
We
Very
can
system.
do those, there was a scatter plot, and we can do those scatter plots and look at that. But what would, again, I don't know, looking at teacher by teacher would be
No,
beneficial
No,
to you.
I'm not, yeah.
Yeah,
that
can
was
we
just
get it at
example,
the
yeah.
level so that you can see, so that it would be useful to you to see if we are inflating grades or not inflating grades or that kind of thing in different tiers or different grades?
Yeah. Only tier, system level. And then I agree with Will on the recruiting pipeline, and I would actually split that by, given that THEC gives us a huge, rich source of information about the most impactful teacher prep programs, at least in the state of Tennessee, I would show all that data by teacher prep program in terms of, as a proxy for, I think, the quality that Mr. Pinkston is referring to. And then I would look at that again also over time, because if we're getting 10 people from Vanderbilt, I don't know what to think about that unless it's against data over multiple years. Let's see. Love the point too about professional development of teachers. Totally agree with what Jill was saying about ideally it's very teacher-led. So it's just literally like teachers are happy with this session. They're not. Not that I want session by session, but just generally like when surveyed on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, are they rating it a 10? Are they rating it a 1 or what, so that we have some sense of just how teacher or professional development is perceived and experienced by teachers system-wide. Let's see, and then, I swear I'm about to be done. Oh,
Take your time.
and then NWEA, yes, I agree. That's the best predictive. I'm assuming it's going to be predictive anyway.
Sorry, what was that again?
The NWEA agreed needs to also be in there. Yeah.
Is that it?
Uh,
Did you go on the other page?
He's like, you sure you're done? We may have talked about, let's see. Chronic absenteeism.
We did that one already. But while we're looking, Mr. Pinkston.
I want to go back to something Ms. Kim suggested at the front end of the request about updating the academic performance framework to look at per pupil funding. I agree with that, and I want to pull that out a little bit further and suggest, and this I know will require some sort of, I imagine, some sort of data capture mechanism that doesn't currently exist, but we need to know the total per pupil funding that's in a school, not just what's coming from MNPS and the budget, but private sources of funding too. So whether that's my daughter's school, which has the ability to raise significant amounts of private dollars and does, or whether that's charter schools, which also do the same, I think that will give us a clearer picture of exactly how much money it does take to educate a child at different levels. And I just think it's informative, if nothing else, than to say, look, the real per pupil cost, public and private, to get to a certain level of education is this, and that becomes part of our mission to educate the community about what's going on in public education and the funding of it.
So let me ask you a question about that. Number one, I'm assuming that they do, but just for clarity's sake. So those private donations are captured and tracked and reported?
The PTOs has, I don't know, you probably best.
There are multiple sources of private funding that schools receive. Of course, individual schools have their own individual school fundraisers, which are captured in the student activity funds, which are not a part of the district funding, but are by state law under the jurisdiction of the principal, but they're held at the school site, separate set of accounting records. Also, there are PTO, PTA fundraisers that are outside of the school activity funds. They are captured within that organization, but that is an outside organization. And so that they're captured somewhere, they're just not necessarily captured through the district's financial records.
So, I mean, so are they reported up to the district? I guess I'm just trying to understand how Laura could tap into that without another data request or establishing a reporting deal. And then I think the other question becomes, are those funds, and I guess I'm just trying to make sure we're truly apples to apples, because in our per pupil funding, does it include capital dollars? Right, and so I think it depends on what those private funds are raised for. So if I'm raising funds to put a computer at every desk, do I capture that? If I'm raising funds to plant a garden, do I capture that? So I guess I'm trying to understand that when we start talking about what it costs to educate a child, we're capturing the right dollars. Go ahead.
Yes, so I'd like to know, to create a reporting mechanism for every single school in the district, charter, magnet, traditional, or other, how much private money is coming into the school, and then where is that money going from there? Is how much of it's going to capital improvements, how much of it is going to activities related to, extracurricular program, how much of it is going to the classroom, and that last part being the most important part for arriving at a true per pupil funding cost. So I know we're talking about creating, particularly when it comes with charter schools, new reporting mechanisms that don't exist, but I think it's important if we're really going to be honest about what does this stuff really cost.
Okay. Anyone else? You got your finger up. Okay.
I'm just wondering how hard that would be to capture all that information like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a system in place is what I'm
No.
guessing right now.
No, we don't have a common data system to collect that information at this point. Each one of those organizations or methods that Chris just mentioned has their own, it could be, the PTA could have a spreadsheet. In one, they may be using, some off-the-shelf accounting package in another. I don't know, but it isn't something that is regulated. There is not a common data system. So to capture regularly and consistently, and this is where you have to look at the processes as well as the systems that are collecting. And that's a funding discussion as well, because those systems, and then the training and the rules, business rules, yeah.
Yes, I'm just going to have to ask the honest question. Is the effort to even establish a system going to be worth it if we now have inconsistent participation in the process? So I just think, I think it's a good question. And is the lift big enough to sort of change the tide of the discussion?
And I think that's probably a discussion that, you know what I mean, our financial folks, looking at the systems and how we manage our accounting. And again, this is not my area of specialty because it's not a data set that we work regularly with, because we do have different levels and disparate systems as far as how that's managed. So to do it consistently, everything across the district, I will tell you, that is a huge lift. And it is costly because you are looking at a data system that would handle basically all levels of that so that you can compare apples to apples and have it in a hierarchy format and link and relate data that needs to be linked and related upon its collection to be meaningful in the analysis, if that made any sense.
You could, all that information is available, at least in charters. You could actually put that in there in terms of the per pupil cost. So that's fine, like where it's easy, but I agree, like forcing everyone, like that is so processing and bureaucratic to do that. I think, I'm sure we just know that, yes, probably Julia Green is raising a lot of money. I mean, there's certain places that are, and that's what it is. And
We do have to turn it in. I would think if you're wanting a snapshot every time you come, that would be cumbersome, but we have an annual report that we have to turn in that shows, we have to turn in our business statements. We've done that every year. So, it's somewhere here.
I'd personally be fine with
Right.
either per pupil funding or, and mostly it's just like directionally, or like it's easily available because like for the charters, they have to report all that stuff out anyway in terms of what they fundraise. So we don't want to create more like
Where do they
process
report
for
it?
this,
Do they
the
report it to
system.
us?
No. And I don't
It's
think it
all on
comes
their
up.
websites.
Yeah.
It's all transparent, yeah.
Today, it doesn't come to us. So I think a breakdown that would be interesting, given I think the last budget meeting we had here in this room, was of that per pupil funding, how much of it is how much of it is grant and non-grant, right? How much of those are grant dollars, and how much of those are that base, whatever it is, that comes, you know what I'm saying? Grant and non-grant, it's the best I can come up with. You look bored, so we just decided.
No, this is the kind of feedback we need, and one of the things I will tell you, I can't guarantee that all of this is gonna come together in one cute little dashboard that is, do you know what I mean? Because
I'm all for the 11 by
that's a
17
lot.
piece of paper.
There's a lot of stuff up here.
Yeah.
So, and I really am here to listen and take this back, but this is an iterative process.
Sure.
And so I will kind of do the best I can. We are recording this, which is great, because I will have my staff look at it so they can hear your requests as well. So yeah, we're on the right track. But again, just expect that you may get some emails, or I may ask for 15 minutes to have you look, give some quick feedback. Are we on the right track? Yes, keep going, great. So.
All right. Anything else, guys?
And you don't have to wait for another meeting to give feedback or clarify either. Like I got my email, you all can email me, I'll actually answer you and get feedback as long as going to be honest and candid and allow me to be the same. We're good.
It's crazy talk.
So if I may encourage you to keep the board informed as you do the work, as you develop the processes and everything required, I think that'd be really important too.
Yeah. We'll get, just kind of some initial mock-ups, requirements, make sure we heard what you wanted before we go and do a lot of development. So you can expect that to come out first, and then we'll just start to put together some things that you'll be able to respond to. And, I may reach out and try to get some feedback from you on the best way you think to do that. One of the things I want to make sure going forward is that we are crafting something for the board, not for individual board members. And so everyone just gets their individual needs thrown up on a dashboard. Because again, we go back to that initial question, a dashboard, and specifically a school board dashboard, is designed to meet the needs of you as a body.
So I would like to just go on record as saying, since you're going to have your staff to to view the game tape, as Mr. Pinkston likes to refer to it, all requests get vetted by the board. Okay, so when you come, this is our feedback. We've provided a formal opportunity for feedback in pieces of data that we may be interested in to be given to you. As we work through our iterations, Ms. Kim and I were just talking, maybe it's you coming here for 15 minutes when something new gets added to the dashboard to say, here's what it is, here's what this is the question that you mentioned from those notes. This is the question we think we're answering with this additional block of data. Is it not? Thank you very much.
That's
Okay?
great,
So
yeah.
this room, this table, that podium,
I
a
love it.
dashboard.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great, thank you all so much for
You're
your time and
so
thought
welcome.
into this. I appreciate it.
And guess what? The work session is over. I know some of you are a little famished and faint. Just the work session, we got a meeting to go after this. Do you want to take a break and go get some food? For y'all who sneaked out to get food and didn't bring any back, are we good? All right, so I saw some M&Ms down there. She's got apples in her purse. She had a cheeseburger. She had a tuna salad sandwich. Yeah, I heard it all. Are we good to keep going, or you want a break? You good? I have to defer to Dr. Brand. Are you okay? All right, so, we got agenda? Anybody pass it out? Oh, there we go. All right, so we're going to officially call the board meeting for April 30th to order. We do have a quorum. I want to quickly go ahead and thank my board members for the indulgence of moving from Tuesday to today. We have no awards and recognitions, no good news is. I'm sure there's a whole lot of good news. So we're going to go straight into governance issues. Oh, wait, there's a Pledge of Allegiance in here somewhere. I was rolling, wasn't I? It was so good. All right, Clay, you stood up first. Thank you. Now, Ms. Kim,
The consent agenda.
you need your mic on.
A, approval of minutes, 12/9/2014, 1/13/2015, and 1/27/2015 regular meetings. B, recommended approval of contract for East Nashville Magnet High School band room renovation, Dowdle Construction Group LLC. C, recommended approval of Amendment C for prototypical pre-kindergarten and kindergarten playgrounds at various schools, custom recreation. D, recommended approval of change order number 7 for Hume-Fogg Magnet Schools High School Gymnasium Addition, DF Chase Incorporated. E, recommended approval of change order number 2 for Stratford STEM High School renovations, Messer Construction Company. F, recommended approval of request number 1 for purchase of furniture, Waverly Belmont Elementary School, HST Interior Elements LLC. G, recommended approval of request number 8 for purchase of furniture, Waverly Belmont Elementary School, Guy Brown Interiors. H, recommended approval of request number 1 for purchase and installation of bleachers, Glencliff High School, Dan Clayton Corporation. I, recommended approval of request number 9 for district-wide maintenance, repairs, and general construction, natatorium renovations at Glencliff High School, Carrie G. Campbell Incorporated. J, awarding of purchases and contracts. 1, Cartridge Central, 2, Cartridge Rural Nashville, 3, Communities and Schools of Tennessee, 4, DK Brand Strategy, 5, Leaf Racer, Hyman and Bernstein, 6, Lipscomb University, 7, Microsoft Corporation, 8, Pitney Bowes, 9, Total Prints, 10, Vanderbilt Peabody Research. K, approval of special textbook adoption, IB Math Studies, IB Mathematics SL, IB Mathematics HL Year 1, and IB Mathematics HL Year 2.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Item number 2, public accountability for charter schools resolution. Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move that we go ahead and approve the resolution to adopt the independent accountability and transparency standards for all Metro Nashville Public Schools.
I second it.
You've heard the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hold on, Ms. Frog, and then Ms. Pierce. Okay.
And for those who are watching in the audience who may not have the paper, should we read it?
I can read that.
The whole what? Oh,
It's there.
okay. Let's say that you want to read the standards thing. I said, no, you kidding? Hold on a second. Ms. Frog, hold on 1 minute. Ms. Shepherd.
Okay. Whereas traditional districts and charter schools should work together to ensure a coordinated approach that serves all children, and whereas school governance should be representative and transparent, and whereas it is the duty of the Metropolitan Board of Public Education to ensure Metro Nashville Public Schools provides strategic growth and expansion for its schools to better serve students in the community while protecting taxpayers. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Metropolitan Board of Education, Public Education supports independent accountability and transparency standards for all Metro Nashville's public schools as recommended by the Annenberg Institute for School Reform and as prescribed by Tennessee state laws. Be it further resolved, the Metropolitan Board of Public Education and the Director of Schools shall apply these standards when making decisions regarding school expansion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Now, Ms. Frobe?
Yes, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the presentation this evening. And I had a statement. I support adoption of the Annenberg Standards, which in my opinion is the bare minimum step we should take to ensure transparency and accountability for our charter schools. These standards create a clear set of expectations and rules under which all schools should operate. The goal is to protect the health of the school system overall and to ensure that every child in every school has an opportunity to succeed. I've had several experiences that indicate to me a need for greater transparency around charter schools. A few meetings ago, I asked about the services we are providing free of cost to our charters, and I received a dishonest answer. I was told that we do not provide services free of cost to charters. I know that this answer was inaccurate because 2 days later, we met with our independent auditors who led off their meeting by stating that we do indeed provide indirect services free of cost to charters. The auditors emphasized that we need to recoup these indirect costs in order to offset the growing negative fiscal impact that charter schools are having on the district. I was subsequently provided a list by the district that details indirect services we offer charter schools free of charge. However, some items appear to be missing from this list, so I filed an open records request to ascertain the accuracy of the information. I was concerned that the list sent out to the board is not comprehensive. Here are some of the items included by administrators in their summary of charter costs that did not make the final list that we received. Number one, a full-time special ed coach for all charter schools who is paid approximately $81,000 per year. Two, time devoted by an existing discipline coordinator who works with charter schools on expulsions. Number three, employee time spent on student records and charter applications. Number four, 2 part-time data coaches. Number 5, services regarding student records and charter applications. And number 6, EL services from an existing employee. In addition, there are several other services that did not make the list, which charter schools appear to be receiving free of cost. These include athletic costs, participation in the MNPS teacher fair, participation in the MNPS First Choice Festival, food services including food delivery, setup and employee time, and learning technology services. What happened on this occasion reflects my previous experiences in trying to get information about charter schools. When I've asked questions in the past, I've had very difficult time getting answers from the Office of Innovation, and sometimes my requests have been completely ignored. For example, I asked for charter school wait lists several months ago, but I have yet to receive them. It was also difficult to obtain our charter capacity numbers, which have yet to be fully explained. So the question here is not what we could or should charge charter schools for indirect services. That's something the board and administration can debate, and sometimes the answers will be murky. The issue here is that there is limited transparency when it comes to our charters. Information about charter schools such as capacity, waiting lists, and costs should be readily available to board members and to the public in general who fund these schools. A board member should not have to file an open records request to get the information she wants. Charter schools are funded by tax dollars and should be required to follow the same rules as other public schools with regard to sharing information. An agreement to follow the Annenberg standards would be a big step in the right direction for greater transparency and accountability for charter schools in Nashville. It would also level the playing field by requiring that all types of schools play by the same rules, which would foster collaboration.
You still have?
I do.
Okay. Ms. Pierce?
I've got to refocus back to Annenberg. So I think my question, I'm addressing it to you, Ms. Shepherd, is when we adopt these, if we adopt these, would this be taken back up in committee? Is that what I was understanding after the work session for policy governance around EE 17? At that time, this is where we will go standard by standard to be able to determine with Metro Legal which ones are in state law. And then do you foresee an opportunity for us to bring in, the stakeholders who will be affected by these changes, meaning the charter leaders, just to get input and insight around how they see these applying on a day-to-day operation, even with our district schools, because some of the contract posting or different things, I'm just wanting to know how we're going to flesh those out.
Well, that would be something that, of course, we would decide in committee.
Okay, in committee. Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, how are you? Yeah, I guess, first of all, as a just general statement, obviously, accountability, transparency, incredibly important. How are we thinking of these set of standards versus, let's say, NACSA? Or any set of standards that govern, that talk about transparency, accountability? Just given that, I still have a concern that given a number of the things that are listed on here, it's not about the general ethos or idea of accountability and transparency, obviously, 100% support that. The question is that if we approve these as read, or at the Annenberg standards, there's a number that are in direct conflict with state board
Right.
law,
And
so.
I think Mr. Dixon addressed that earlier.
Is it possible for us to just articulate then the standards that we would want to adopt that are directly applicable to Nashville, that are not in direct conflict, and then bring that up as then
In committee.
the thing to actually then approve? There's something, you know what I'm saying, like, I'm all for transparency, all for accountability, but it seems sort of like an improv, like we're putting a cart before a horse a little bit.
So let me ask what may be a clarifying question. Is it possible to restate the motion that well, I guess it's a resolution, not just to adopt all the standards, but, and I don't know if you can change it at this point. So I think what we're trying to make sure is that passing this resolution doesn't mean it's an all, but that what we're really saying is that we want to move this to governance committee to review them.
And I did.
I think it's in, was it in there?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Will,
I think
I'm sorry, were you done?
what the, I think, I'm trying to figure out how to say this politely, but I won't. We learned last year through the charter process that management is prone to disregard what the board has articulated as stated priorities. So I think what tonight feels like to me is a statement of principles, that this is what we believe in or not, that we think that these standards represent a model set of standards. But through that, I think we can go ahead and say on the record, because this will be living on YouTube and in the minutes in perpetuity, that any part of this that we later determine through legal advice does not conform to state law, then that part does not get integrated into the process. And Dr. Pardon me, the expert who presented earlier said the key word, implementation, and that is the key part of this. So I think what we ought to say is, look, we like these in principle, which is what the resolution does, and then direct management as part of that to go hash out the implementation and report back to us along the way. The other thing I'd like to do is reserve the right, if they're open to it, to ask Annenberg to come back to the table in the future as we get downfield in implementation to kind of pressure test that work, and that's where the rubber meets the road. So I think the resolution is sound as written, and the details, can be determined in the implementation phase.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's two different things in terms of, will that be determined in policy by us, or are we saying management will do it? I mean, I would prefer to have the opportunity in policy governance to go standard by standard and have some collaborative input. And like I said before, I have not seen that part, at least from the parties bringing this kind of campaign to our table, as far as bringing in the other parties to really say we're going to work together and own this together. I mean, I would be more comfortable approving it if we know that we're going to do that in policy governance ourselves.
After it's been vetted and we're
Right.
very clear what we are saying, what we're not saying.
So, okay. Yeah, hold on.
Well,
Hold on. Mary, I'm sorry, Amy.
Okay, here's my question. So we have these standards that are proposed, they're national standards. Several other states are adopting them. If they conflict with state law, then that's a real problem, we need to redact them. But my question is, if you have issues with any of these standards, what are those issues? Which standards do you oppose and why?
I mean, do we want to do that?
No. No, we're not going to do that tonight. So,
Because we're voting on them as a whole.
so here is my point, and I think that's the point that everybody's trying to make here, is that we're either adopting all the standards, or we're making a determination to go through the exercise of reviewing the standards. Because, bottom line, and Mr. Pinkston, I will pull the thread on what you said, this is recorded. So we're in a, and may I see that for a second, please? It says that be it resolved, the Metropolitan Board of Education supports independent accountability and transparency standards for all Metro Public Schools as recommended by the Annenberg Institute for School Reform as prescribed by Tennessee state law. School governance should be, the Metropolitan Board of Education apply these standards when making decisions. So it does, as written, say that we're going to adopt all the standards. So we just need to agree at this table, we're not going to change the resolution, don't have time for that, that the next step is for the governance committee to get together. I would suggest you have legal, to Will's point, or somebody present to help you go standard by standard and make sure there isn't any conflict. The second thing comes back to what we talked about at the dashboard. Are the processes in place to actually get the information that you're asking for? And we have said this, and I appreciate the resolution reading for all schools. Do we have processes in place to allow us to gather the data that we believe are necessary to be able to do this? No one at this table can answer that question. So this conversation, even though there seem to be some frowns when I said it needs to be other people at the table with governance committee, other people need to be at the table with governance committee. Because as, again, was pointed out, it's about the implementation. We can feel however we want to feel about this being the right thing to do. If we are incapable of doing it, it becomes another moot point, right? And so then we get into that big debate, as we've done in the past, about a resolution, whether it's a policy, and then management ignoring, disrespecting, not giving any attention or credence to what the board has decided. But if we're going to decide this in a vacuum about collaboration, we're going to decide this in a vacuum that it must happen, we need to understand what's possible. And if it's not possible today, then the committee's responsibility is to work with the central office and management, whomever, to come up with a timeline by when it can happen. My first question is, how does this apply to, so we talk about a level playing field, if it's applied at the school level, does it apply if we adopt it and we pick 6 of the 7 or 3 of the 7 that say we're able to monitor, these are the ones that we think are important, these are the ones that do not conflict with state law, like the one that says we're fully funded by the state, we have no control over that, right? They are not fully funded by the state, that one automatically goes out the window. So if we're talking about a level playing field, if we adopt these today, do they apply to the charter schools we already have, based on whatever their current contract is? And so the assumption would be that if we make it policy, it will apply to all charters that are approved going forward. Because my question becomes, what happens to the charters that are currently in place? And so I can't answer that question, but I think it's a valid question that someone needs to answer for us. You got it.
I personally don't have any interest in sitting down on governance committee and going through this matching process. I think that's the kind of thing that's uniquely suited to delegating to management. And, we did not, as a board, I don't think, do that when NACSA standards were adopted by the Charter Review Committee, which were basically a unilateral adoption. The board never even had a chance to weigh in on that. So at least we're weighing in on something for a change, potentially. If y'all want and need more meetings, then for sure, let's do that, but I just don't see that it's necessary. The one thing I do want to say is if we adopt these tonight, or adopt this resolution tonight, I do think there needs to be an effort to communicate to the operators who have applications in front of us right now to go ahead and tell them what our expectations are going to be of them in principle, pending further review, and that they need to be prepared to abide by our expectations when they start coming online with any new schools that are approved in fall 2016. And I further think that as the resolution is written, it not just directs the board, but also the director of schools to apply the standards before making any decisions. So I would expect if we approve this, that this ought to be part of the current application cycle, so that we're being clear with them what our expectations are, and we're getting commitments from them in return that they hear and agree prior to any new school being recommended to the board. Thanks.
Anything else?
So what do
We're recommending that management go through each one of these to determine whether or not they are in agreement with state law?
There's apparently some body of research that already exists that has been shared around that suggests that some of these standards are not consistent with state law. So I think the resolution to me is sound. It sort of articulates, as I read it, here's what we as a group want to do if we pass it. And then from there, I think management is in charge of implementing the policy that's embodied in the resolution. Not policy as in policy governance, but it is in policy embodied in the resolution. And they can kind of ascertain in consultation with Metro Legal or other counsel what, if any of it, is in conflict with state law. And I question that much of it is, but you know, if there's something that is, then we should know it, and we can sever it out of whatever.
Committee? I mean, it'll come back to us?
I think it could be administratively severed.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
You have something?
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So here's my caution. We don't play nice together. We just don't. And so we can sit here and say what we believe administration needs to be. I think we need to own it. We need to own it until it is baked, until we agree specifically what's in and what's out, because we don't play nice together. And so my recommendation and my expectation would be, if this resolution passes, the next step is for it to go to governance committee, to go through that exercise of which one of these then gets baked into policy, what's the number? EE 17, so that it lives beyond and it exists in a place that has, again, the transparency that we're sitting here talking about today. We still need the question answered, at least I do, I don't know how you feel about it, about what does this mean for the charters that are in place today? Because again, it is no longer a level playing field if the charters that exist today don't fall under, because it's a school level resolution. It's not an operator resolution, it's a school level resolution. It's school level standards. So we just need to figure that out. Can't answer it now, but I think that's a good question for a committee to get clarification on, as what that means. So my recommendation would be that the next step is that it goes to committee and not sent out into the ethos somewhere, atmosphere, waiting for something to come back. It needs to be managed to completion, managed to the point where it can be baked into policy.
So it's going to be, if it was your recommendation, are you saying it goes to committee, so then?
Legal can look at it?
I
or
think
we
it
can-
goes to committee, and you invite whomever you need to have at that meeting, so that it is a discussion, whether it's someone from the Office of Innovation, whether it's someone from legal, to sit there and say, as we look through these 7 recommendations, or 7 standards for transparency for all schools, which ones do not conflict with state law, so we immediately eliminate those, and for those that remain, what processes do we have today that need to be expanded so that we can capture that data? When we just had conversation, we were talking about the dashboard, we don't have processes in place for everything that we think we want. So we need to make sure that we have a process in place so that we can then be in concert with the policy, our own policy. Hold on, Ms. Froh.
I completely agree. I think if we vote these in, they have to be vetted for compliance with state law, and that we also should be, make sure that we should implement them. What I would like to avoid is to vote these in and then get back in committee and spend hours and hours arguing about them. I think we either vote them in or we don't vote them in. That's my, but, you know,
that's
as
what the
far as what is,
resolution's
what we can monitor, and as far as what we can, you know, what is legal, I think we do need to have those discussions. And we can invite anybody you want to the table. That I really don't want to continue to hash this out over and over again.
Sure.
So.
So again, just to Ms. Froeh's point, the approval of the resolution is the approval of the spirit of the Annenberg standards for transparency for all schools. So when you come to governance committee, your position and posture needs to be, how do we make this work? Not, why are we doing this? Because you can't get past why we're doing this. If your vote was no, you might want to stay home. Mr. Pinkston.
All right, if we're going back to governance committee, I would just ask that we expedite that work and the legal analysis that needs to go ahead of it so that we have these questions firmly answered before another charter application is brought to us.
Ms. Harkey is nodding her head.
And I think, second, when we do come around the table, I think it's important to look at this through the prism of, okay, here's a set of standards. You know, we don't want to, I don't think, get in the business of telling experts, whether they're teachers writing curriculum or education policy
Correct.
experts who have articulated standards, that we're going to invite a bunch of people to the table to rewrite your standards. I think we go in and look at it from a position of what's legally allowable, what's not, and of those that aren't, sever, and then of those that are, apply. And, you know, rather than get in the business of articulating some basically new product. I just want to.
Yeah, and so I think with the having administration at the table helps us understand when that implementation can go into effect. Because all of that won't be able to happen on day one. Maybe not be able to happen in an automated way on day one. So we have to respect the fact that some of that's going to be manual gathering of a whole bunch of stuff. So whatever that looks like and feels like. Anything else? Good? We call for the question. Thank you. Dr. Brennan? Yes.
Sorry, I'm confused. So what's the, I thought that we were going to take it to committee.
Approving the resolution. Next step would be for committee to meet legal, with input from legal and central office to then pick through or review the sever.
Even though the language of the resolution is not.
Yeah, I'm still uncomfortable with the
That's-
language of the resolution. Now, you can make a motion to modify the language of the resolution if you like. I think she can.
Well, the good news, actually the great news is that 23 of these are already, I mean, they're already done. I mean, truly, like, this is all great. This is all about accountability, it's about transparency. A bunch of them have already done. For example, require that each charter school's original application and charter agreement be available online on the websites of both the individual school and the charter authorizer. Yay, already done. So we already meet 23 of them. So my point is just truly, like, there's a bunch, though, that, in fact, you can't require. And so my thought is we should just, and the language of the actual resolution does not allow for that. So as a point of, I feel like we're all on the same page. We're all saying, I'm fine with communicating to the charter community and all applicants that this communicates the general spirit of what we're trying to do. And in fact, look, 23 of them, we already do in Nashville. But I feel like we need to get it right, or either amend the resolution or to account for that or something. Like something is.
Could I recommend adding 3 words to the last clause? The Nashville Metropolitan Board of Public Education and the Director of Schools apply these standards, comma, pending legal analysis, comma, when making decisions regarding school expansion.
Say that again.
Be it further resolved, the Metropolitan Board of Public Education and the Director of Schools apply these standards, comma, pending legal analysis, comma, when making decisions regarding school expansion.
That's a recommendation.
To the change to
And
language.
I second the recommendation.
Yeah, so I guess technically,
It's a new motion.
okay. So I would move to amend the resolution as introduced by adding the changes that I just repeated.
Twice. Okay. So we have 2 motions on the floor. We still have to go through both of them. Is there any comments on the second motion? Comments on the second motion? Okay. All improve,
I'm just confused. What are we voting on?
okay,
Are we
right?
voting on
Let me be clear.
number two?
You're voting on number 2. We're nesting motions. So the motion that's on the floor right now, right?
Yes.
Is that we, I got this, that's good, right? Yeah, that's parliamentary. All right, nested motion, second motion. Motion on the floor right now is to adopt the resolution with the modified language shared by Mr. Pinkston. It's been, motion's made, it's been properly second, no discussion. Now you want to discuss.
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of this that's bothersome to me is that we have had no collaboration with the community that this will impact. And I think we're agreeing on accountability and transparency, but we all know when we say it when we deal with teachers or different things, that sometimes policy on paper is one thing, but enacted on a day-to-day can have a different meaning. And so we say we want to involve those stakeholders to bring them to the table to think through those things. So whether we've gotten 100 emails or not, some of those were duplicates. Those were requested. We have not even brought the chartered community in to say, do they have public comment? We didn't know what the resolution was going to be until yesterday. So, there hasn't been a process to actually involve and truly collaborate together on this. And I think we could get there, but you're right, we don't play nice together. So I would almost pend legal analysis and collaboration with the affected stakeholders.
Mr. Pinkston?
Ms. Shepherd brought notice of the motion weeks ago, whenever it was. There have been news stories written about the Annenberg standards. They've been out there in the public domain plenty of time, and to my knowledge, we haven't gotten one email from a charter operator expressing concern about it until yesterday, when we got one from LEAD, and there were a couple that came from Strive board members today. So it's been out there. It's not a surprise. The standards themselves have been, widely discussed nationally and now widely disseminated locally. So if somebody wants to bring input, there's nothing to stop them from doing that. And like
Well,
we said,
there
governance committee is the place to do that after we move to the next step.
But they would be stopped, if we kept it at just a legal analysis. I will just, we'll say with Todd Dixon, I think he's extremely reasonable and thoughtful, and I asked him just to look through the standards, and there's really only a few that I think that we should really discuss collaboratively with the stakeholders as how we apply that here in Nashville and not based on some national worst-case scenarios.
So what I will say to that, Ms. Pierce, is, to use the words that you just shared, is collaboration on how they get applied. So that's right now not the discussion. The question is, are we adopting the standards? Implementation and how they get applied is a different conversation. It really does get to, again, what does it mean for Nashville? Which I hope is what we're saying when we say go to committee, bring central office staff, legal to the table. What does the implementation of standard number 2 look like in Nashville-Davidson County, given the relationship we have or want to have with all us? And again, we try to, I think in the wording, elevate this to be about all schools. And everybody keeps just never know, okay, what we can talk about. One day I'm going to plan a wedding, and I'm going to see how many times the word charter gets brought up as I plan a wedding right here at this table. But anyway, we want to make sure we're trying to have this conversation about transparency and reporting and accountability for all schools. And so the other thing I will say, and I think I try to be as unbiased as possible when it comes to this particular topic, and I've said this at the retreat, and I say it publicly here, our responsibility is not for a school or a type of school. It's for students. We were reminded in the retreat that we are trustees of 86,000 students, regardless of the type of school they have chosen to get their education in, regardless. And so what makes this conversation difficult, and every conversation we have difficult, is that it keeps getting, I think, out of focus from what we're responsible for students. Even though we get elected by parents and all the other adults and the big people in the city, we're still accountable, and we're the trustees of the education of 86,000 students. And so we have to stop having these conversations through these aberrant lenses that then cause us to be very, sometimes abrasive or very argumentative, and keep focused on, are we making a decision to do something that's in the best interest of 86,000 students? That's the only question we need to be asking ourselves right now. Not as, are we about to do something to hold a charter school accountable? Am I about to do something so I can point the finger at something someone in the community or a particular school operator has done? Are we making a decision that will, in the end, benefit 86,000 students? And I would dare say that if you cannot answer yes to that question, then your vote for this should be no. Ms. Shepherd.
Right. So we've had some real robust discussion around this table. To my knowledge, this is the first time in 5 years that we've had a discussion around this particular topic. And this resolution is the kickoff point, it's the kickoff for having the further discussions in committee and wherever else we need to have these discussions around this topic. And it's a very important topic, and as Dr. Gentry said, it affects 86,000 students in this district, and I think it's vitally important that we protect them in any way we can, and I think this is just one important way that we can do that.
Ms. Kim?
So, yeah, this is, I mean, because it's, I think, yes and yes. It's just interesting that, right, like, this is the first time we're discussing it. It is a kickoff point. It's just interesting that it's the first time that we're talking about a set of standards that's going to affect 20 schools, and all of our schools, because we're saying that the same standards would apply to all of our schools, that we're even saying so specifically the Annenberg standards as opposed to NACSA, or as opposed to anything. I just find, you know, it again, like the spirit, everyone is on the same page on the spirit. It just feels as though why not NACSA versus Annenberg versus, you know, I guess I'm just a little, I feel like a vote no is not actually saying no to kids. It's just all we're saying is that we would like a little more time to discuss it. What are the actual standards that are relevant? So if you got traditional principals together and charter school principals together, like what would they have to say about this in terms of the level of like autonomy, bureaucracy then that is being applied? And you know, again, 23 of them are already in place, so of the Annenberg ones. I don't know if NACSA, does anyone know the NACSA one? No. So it's just interesting, like everyone's for standards, we're all for accountability standards, and yet I sort of worry that just the way that this whole conversation is framed up, that if yes, you vote no, then you're against standards or against accountability, or if you vote yes, then you're for them. And I feel like that's not quite that narrow of a discussion. I think it's just interesting that for the very first time when we're talking about standards, like I would even vote for that if it was just revised to say just a discussion of standards. Let's adopt standards that all of us agree to, that apply, that will create transparency and accountability. I am for that. Like it's just that I don't understand the Annenberg one. We still haven't figured out the details versus NACSA versus any number of
I
standards.
have a point of.
Hold on.
Point of order.
Hold on. Okay.
Point of order. Dr. Brandon called for the question. Doesn't that mean?
She called for the, yeah, on the first one?
I thought it was the second one.
No, she actually called for it on the first one, too. It was the first one.
Okay.
Well, my mistake, because I've already messed you up by allowing the second motion. Mr. Pinkston?
I'd flip the conversation and talk about academic standards for a minute. Common Core state standards are a list of expectations of what every child should know at each grade level. How the teacher then teaches to the standard and how the standard is absorbed by the child in the classroom is a totally different conversation that gets into lesson plans and processes and teaching, styles of teaching and pedagogy and everything else. All this is a list of, these Annenberg standards is a set of expectations. I'm going to read one. Required charter school authorizers, that's us, to prepare an impact statement before approving any new charter school application. If you don't agree with that standard or others in the list, then you should vote against it. But if you do, it's pretty straightforward and pretty plain English, and the implementation of how we prepare those impact statements is part of the next set of discussion. But this is the starting point, it feels like, and so that I would like to call the question on the second motion to amend the resolution as introduced.
No, you already called the question. I messed up the first time, you're not going to catch me again. All right. Call for the question. We're ready for the vote on the second motion to adopt the resolution with the modified language as shared by Mr. Pinkston, inserting pending legal review.
Legal analysis.
Legal analysis, excuse me, of the standards.
And another motion can't be made of this slight revision.
Not once she calls for the question. Kind of ends discussion. That's the whole purpose of it. Sorry. All in favor? Aye. Okay, I need to count hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay. It passes. So just to be clear on next steps, I have to go through the second motion. All in favor of the original motion to approve the resolution as originally read? All in favor?
Wait, we're now approving the resolution as amended.
No, we've already done
We
that.
already did it.
Oh, okay.
I can kill the first motion. Can I kill it?
Okay, okay.
You had two motions. The second motion was actually a motion to amend the first motion. So now you've amended the motion, so now you're back on the original motion.
Right.
As amended. So this is
I already
where
did that.
you're voting.
I thought I just did that.
It's, you basically,
You have to do it twice.
it's, you, yeah.
Okay,
you
yeah.
basically vote for it twice.
Gotcha.
You amended it.
You're right.
You now amended it,
So
and
now-
you're back on the original.
Can we, okay. So all approve of the amended motion. All in favor? Same people got to vote
Yeah,
again.
amended
Yeah.
motion.
The amended resolution.
Amended resolution.
Yeah.
Everybody
Aye.
says?
Yes.
All opposed? Same three. Gotcha. All right. So the resolution passes. Clarity on next steps. The ball is in your court, Ms. Froh, to schedule the governance committee meeting and Ms. Harkey to do the review, highlighting anything that we believe is in conflict with state law as it stands. I think that the document, I don't know where you got it from, or the highlights the things that are already in place, needs to be a document that Ms. Froh has it available to her. And then whomever we believe you need from administration in that same meeting, so that we can talk about what it looks like for Nashville. Are we good?
Right.
All right. I'm tired. Okay. Dr. Brandon, let's name a school. I vote for PS number 2.
Okay. Board members, if you recall, in the packets 2 weeks ago, information was provided with the request from the principal of IT Cresswell to modify the name for several reasons. It appears 3 times in the database under 3 different names. It also is confused as parents apply for the lottery, and the IT being mistaken for instructional technology. And so in committee, we voted to recommend that Cresswell Middle Prep School of the Arts be the name of that school. I'd like to make a motion that we modify the name.
Cresswell Middle
Prep School of the Arts.
Prep School of the Arts. All right, motion's been made and properly second. All in favor of modifying the name to Cresswell Middle Prep School of the Arts, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? We don't want an IT technology school. All right, motion passes. Okay, topic number 4. Where are we? BEP funding. So before I defer to Ms. Froh, I just want to give some clarity from a Robert's Rules perspective of where we are right now. So Ms. Froh made a motion at the last meeting that did not pass. She wants to reintroduce that same motion. She's provided documentation around the table. So the first thing that has to happen, one of 2 things. Ms. Froh, you have 2 options, and we've already discussed this, is that you can ask for a suspension of the rules that would allow you to then reintroduce a motion that has already been introduced and failed, or someone who was against the motion, so voted against the motion that was made at the last meeting, can call for, or make a motion to reconsider. Miss Amy has already decided what it is she's going to do.
I move that we suspend the rules to consider a motion for legal advice.
A second.
The motion has been made and properly second. By a show of hands, all in favor of suspending the rules to reintroduce the motion to consider legal counsel for BEP funding, please raise your hand. 5, all opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, the rules have been suspended. You can now make your motion.
Okay, I have a motion and then I have comments. I move that we engage legal counsel to advise us regarding the lawsuit recently filed for adequate school funding.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
And properly second. Discussion?
I've got comments. Okay, so I've distributed information around the table on, there's a letter that came from John Borkowski, whom I've suggested to advise us as to the funding adequacy lawsuit that was recently filed. And I want to address just a few points that were raised at our last meeting during discussion. First, Mr. Borkowski has represented MNPS over the last 6 years on several matters, including an extensive case regarding the constitutionality of MNPS's student assignment plan and Office of Civil Rights Complaints. As such, he has served as our attorney of record, working alongside Metro Legal. Second, Mr. Borkowski is well qualified for this work. He specializes in trial and appellate litigation with an emphasis on education law issues arising under the U.S. Constitution, state constitutions, and federal statutes and regulations. The lawsuit filed by Hamilton County and other counties alleges that the state has breached its constitutional duty to provide a system of free public education for children in Tennessee. Third, I'd like to address questions regarding the fees that MNPS paid last year to Mr. Borkowski for his representation. Those fees totaled approximately $165,000. The vast majority of that cost, $106,000, went toward defense against an Office of Civil Rights complaint. The remainder of the costs went toward several other matters, including changes in student assignment plans, implementation of the diversity management plan, and challenges to the charter school law and the state's funding formula. It's also noteworthy that Mr. Borkowski will change firms next month, which will reduce his costs by about $200 per hour. Fourth, legal representation involves a dialogue between the client and the attorney concerning pending legal issues. MNPS has not received legal advice on the lawsuit that has been filed regarding adequacy of school funding in Tennessee. So because time is of the essence on this lawsuit, I suggest an initial meeting with Mr. Borkowski to review the pending lawsuit and assess our interest. If we ultimately decide to join the lawsuit or file a lawsuit of our own, we can then decide whether to engage Mr. Borkowski for this work or consider other representation. And so to clarify my motion, I am merely asking that we engage Mr. Borkowski to advise us regarding the pending lawsuit.
Any other discussion? Mr. Pinkston.
Just want to clarify that whatever this next vote is not a vote to litigate. This is a vote to enter into a legal dialogue with an attorney to give us advice on issues that may be relevant to us as it relates to this broader set of litigation that's going on around the state. I have said a couple of times before that I feel like, oh, actually, before I leave the issue of legal dialogue, by the way, 2/3 of the Metro Council, our funding agency, has asked us to enter into a legal dialogue to make sure that our students' interests are protected and our taxpayers' interests are protected. I said a little while ago that we can either be at the table in a legal dialogue or on the menu. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to use a hypothetical example. Hamilton County, Chattanooga, which is one of the districts currently in litigation with the state, has 4.5% plus or minus English learners in their system, which basically mirrors the state average. Here in Nashville, we have, as you know, more than 15% English learners population, and that number is rising. As the state, if at some point the state gets into conversations with these districts about settlement, and if as litigation progresses, if our English learners are not represented in a legal dialogue, I'm going to be really disappointed, and I feel like we will have not done our job to look under every stone to make sure that we're doing our job to represent that potential, that critical subpopulation. So I feel like we need to be tracking this and understand how it could or could not impact us. Thank you.
Ms. Shepherd.
So I'm going to address the timing issue. I want to repeat and clarify my previous comments that I made last time the subject was brought up. I'm opposed to this resolution at this time. Motion at this time. It's not because I don't want to spend the money. That's not it at all. My objection is to the timing of the action. Right now, we are in the midst of the most important decision that we'll probably ever make as board members, and we have to keep our laser vision on that process. We just this afternoon had a 2-hour meeting around that particular process, and this is something that we have to get right. And it's not you or I or the other adults in the room that are going to suffer if we get this decision wrong. It's the kids in the seats that will suffer for sure. It won't be about us; it'll be about them. And added to the search activities that we are doing, we are about to enter graduation season and end of school year activities. And I'm just very concerned about the distraction of having a legal conversation in the midst of everything else that is going on. I think that if we wait a couple months, I don't know that it would hurt if we did that. In fact, I would even like to, offer a suggestion to delay this particular function until after we have a new director of schools, just so we can make sure that we are not distracted by everything else that we have on our plates as school board members.
Okay. Hold on. Ms. Spearing?
I just want to say it's not a motion to litigate. It's a motion to just get legal counsel. Yes.
Conversation.
Hold on. Mr. You've already spoken. I'll go back to Ms. Frobe.
So I just want to address that too, right? So as I've said, we're only asking for legal advice. We're not going to be doing the legal research. We're not going to be doing any of the footwork. We're going to ask the attorney to go and do his own research. And in fact, when I spoke with him to get this letter, he basically said, yes, I'd have to go back and sort of review where we are, review the lawsuit, get more information about it. So that's going to take a little time. But then he will just come to us and have a conversation. The reason I think it's important to move forward is, while it may not hurt, you may be right about that, to wait, it might hurt to wait, and we don't know that until we talk to an attorney to find out. So that's why I suggest that we just have the conversation, then we can decide, because the lawsuit's already been filed and it's moving along, then we decide whether, we want to join, we want to wait to join, we don't want to join. We make those decisions later, but I think it's important that we at least have the conversation in the near future.
Okay, so maybe he can, hold on. Next.
Hold, yes. Mr. Pinkston?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I just think the timing is, if this were in our control, I would agree, let's get through, a process and then get back to the table on this. But it's in motion. There are motions being filed in Chancery Court, and it's just the timing's out of our control. And that's the reason I feel like we ought to go ahead and get advice.
Ms. Shepherd?
Maybe we could ask him to slow walk it. I mean, I'm really conflicted because I think it's a conversation that we need to have, but right now it's just, the most important thing that we're going to do is find another director of schools.
Any other comments?
So could we?
Hold on, wait, that.
Excuse me.
Get the finger, let the finger do the job. Okay, go ahead.
So could we modify the motion to ask him specifically when to begin
When to begin.
whatever process he's going to take?
Well, all I'm asking is that we have him review the lawsuit and review our interests with regard to the lawsuit and have a conversation with us. That's all I'm asking. And then he can tell us, can we wait to file a lawsuit? Can we, if we want to do that, we may not even want to do that. But that's what I'm asking. I'm afraid if we wait, things are going to move along, and the circumstances can change quickly in a lawsuit, and we don't, we would have no input. We may miss an opportunity that we need, to consider. So
My position is that I think we should remain focused on the mission at hand right now. I trust him. He worked with us earlier, but to move in this direction and possibly be in the position to sue with a new superintendent coming in who needs to be focused, I just want to delay to a certain degree. I think we should think it through.
You had it.
Want the
Oh,
BEP money to be what is necessary and what the students deserve. It's not that I don't want the increase, but I do feel that we should take our time. We are not going to sue. We have not decided to sue. We can do that later. That would be my hope.
Hold on. Ms. Pierce? Yeah, that's not her job, though. That's not her finger, this is the finger right here.
Okay. I know at the last meeting when we discussed this, we did talk about, using our own Metro Legal, and there was concern about no experts on BEP and all of that. I would like to ask Ms. Harkey, could we not ask Ms. Harkey to be following that? I mean, she is an attorney. There are litigators in Metro Legal who may have had experience from the previous lawsuits with small schools. Can you answer that question, Corey? Just to know, if circumstances are going to be changing quickly, could we not be asking her to follow along and keep us apprised?
Certainly, you can ask Metro Legal to be involved as much or as little as you want. We do have some litigators that have been involved in the prior 3 small city suits. And so, yes, we certainly do have some expertise within the Metro Legal Department that can offer advice. I'd also say, there is also a difference between just getting initial advice and deciding whether to file a lawsuit. Certainly, asking Metro Legal for initial advice doesn't necessarily mean that you're stuck with us ultimately long run. It can be a kind of a first choice and then a second choice. But certainly, Metro Legal is here. We do have expertise. Certainly are willing to delve into it and offer what we can to the board.
Hold on one second. Ms. Kim has not spoken. So Ms. Hunter, Ms. Kim, Ms. Frog, and then Mr. Pinkston. Ms. Hunter.
I agree with
Yeah.
in making sure that we move forward if we need to be. So I think after hearing Ms. Harkey speak, the last time I was under the impression that she didn't feel like Metro could lead us in the direction that we need to be led in best as it relates to BEP funding and litigation. So I would also say that I don't think any of the distractions that we have are ever going to go away. They're going to be here no matter what we're going through. So this is just another.
Ms. Kim?
Ms. Harkey, do you, well, actually, the most salient thing that I remember from last time, because I would welcome legal advice as one point. The second one is that you were noting that there's no such thing as an expert in BEP funding, period, whether it's this gentleman or anyone. And so could you say more about, because I think, sure, let's have the legal advice. I would like Ms. Pierce was saying, let's follow it. I would love to know what's happening. I could fully buy that this needs to be worked out in the courts, but yes.
My understanding from the question last time that was asked of me is whether there was somebody at Metro Legal that specializes in BEP funding litigation. And my response is, no, there's not somebody that specializes in BEP funding litigation. I don't know whether there is anybody in the nation that specializes in something that so specific. But if the question is, does Metro Legal have expertise? Do we have attorneys that have been involved in BEP litigation prior to now? Yes, we certainly do. I am also more than willing to delve in and provide any legal advice as asked in an executive session or otherwise to the board.
That sounds great to me.
Ms. Frog?
Okay, so we seem to have two different questions going on here. First is, do we have time to engage in a conversation? And my question would be, what is the difference between having time to engage in conversation with one lawyer versus Metro Legal? The second issue we have going on is, who should we get to represent us? And I am open to that discussion. My interest in having Mr. Borkowski involved is that he has had some involvement on this issue in the past with the board, and I think it would speed up some of the time it would take for him to be fully prepared, and he's also been looking at it from a national perspective. That said, I have immense respect for Ms. Harkey, so I'm open to that discussion. But like I said, we have someone who is already engaged in a lot of this research, and that does cut down the time that would take. So the question first is, do we want to have a legal discussion, which it now sounds as if the board is sort of in agreement that we're willing to at least get some sort of legal advice in the short term. The second issue is who should we engage for that
So
purpose?
so to that point, clarify your motion, because I don't think the motion
Okay.
today included outside counsel.
My what now?
Your motion today did not include the phrase outside counsel.
Yeah, I think I said, what did I say? Engage, I was asking to engage Mr. Borkowski.
Was your
So
motion, the
who is
motion
out-
you stated, was it
Right.
specifically Mr. Borkowski?
I did state Mr. Borkowski.
She did?
Yeah, at the end. However,
Okay, now if
Do
you
you mean
want to,
okay.
that's the motion. It has
Right.
been made in second. If you want to make a friendly amendment, you can do that.
I still think that it would be helpful to get Ms. Borkowski to give us the initial advice, then we decide who we want to use.
Let me help you out.
However, wait.
Don't
Oh,
amend it. No, I want to do this. This
Okay,
is fancy.
okay.
Can I do it?
All right, go
You
ahead.
ready?
Go
This is
ahead.
a fancy one. Can I call for a division of the question?
Yes, I was about to do it.
That was mine.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I was about to
Can
do
we
that.
divide the question?
2 issues.
There we go.
Okay. I move that we seek legal advice on the pending lawsuit.
Second.
Okay.
I amend the motion to move. Sorry, I amend the motion to seek legal advice on the pending lawsuit.
Okay. So we have to first vote to accept the amendment, and then we can vote on the amended motion. Is that correct? All right. So you've heard the request to amend the motion. It has been made and seconded. All in favor of amending the motion, say aye. Raise your hands, because y'all making me dizzy. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Woo-hoo! Yourself hands. All right. We amended the motion. Now, we need to vote on the amended motion. All in favor on seeking legal advice on the BEP funding issue, say, raise your hands. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. 1 opposed. Okay, don't ask me nothing else about
Okay.
anybody else. Okay, right now. Okay, here we go. All right, so next steps, Ms. Rogue, you will?
So but how do I know who we're engaging?
I was trying to get rid of that.
I know. Okay, okay.
Because that was not going to work. I'm going to tell you right now.
Okay, well,
Or you would like to try it?
would you like for me to seek legal counsel to advise us as to the lawsuit? I mean,
Can we,
Go ahead.
are we in the middle of a motion?
No, there's no motion.
Okay, all right.
Right now,
I know
we want legal counsel. We all agree on that. Now, Ms. Froh wants to bring a motion that it be specific to Mr. Borkowski. Now, if you want to make that motion, you go right ahead.
for purposes of discussion, I move that we engage Mr. Borkowski to provide us only initial advice regarding this lawsuit.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second? Okay, it's been made and properly second. Discussion. Dr. Brandon.
Yes. What are his, do you know what his legal fees are going to be? Was that given to you
yeah.
or to us?
Well, it will depend on how much time we spend with him, but like I said, his fee is going down, he told me, by $200 per hour about mid-May. And so we're going to have a lesser fee than we have been paying for him in the past, but it's hard to determine precisely how much we would pay unless we know how much time we're going to spend on this issue.
Mr. Pinkston?
Yeah, so our attorneys of record for matters of general legal counsel is Metro Legal. They have chosen in the past to exercise their right to recommend to us when and where they think they need additional capacity, either in terms of expertise or bandwidth or whatever. And we know the most notable case is the Spurlock case, where they turned, and the board turned to John Borkowski. Apparently, there was a significant amount of OCR work, Office of Civil Rights work that was done last year where they turned to him. So he is our counsel of record in addition to Metro Legal. But I think the conversation has to start with Metro Legal, and I would like to, Ms. Vroeg suggests that we ask Metro Legal to advise us on whether they think they need the additional capacity. I suspect that they will find that they do, but I think that we shouldn't necessarily prejudge that, but have that conversation with them, so that if you're willing to have the conversation another day, I think that that might be useful, but
I think that is a fine compromise.
Would you like to rescind your motion?
I would like to rescind my motion.
Okay, that's not,
I'll move.
no, no more, that's okay. We're good. They're our legal counsel, we got a legal matter, that by de facto, defunct, whatever, some other D word, it's on you now, Ms. Harkey. Okay, so we'll have next steps, Ms., would you like to say something else, or?
No, it's fine. If you,
We're going to call an executive session when, after you've done some research, you let us know when you're ready to come to the board.
you let me know when you need me to be ready.
That's what I'm talking about. What you wanting? You going to come up with a date?
Yes, should we have a meeting prior to the next,
It's up to you.
You want to do 2 meetings?
2 meetings from now?
Ms. Harkey? Is that good? Okay. Or more time?
All right, thank you. What? What? What?
So that would be May 26th? The May 26th board meeting.
It's okay, Dr. Brand? Dr. Brandon has to consult her paper calendar. Hold on, please. That's all right, I got one in my bag.
that's why you wanted to do away with IT.
That's what the IT press was. We good?
It's in the calendar. I'm not, that doesn't compute. Okay, yes.
We're okay? Okay, May 26th board meeting. To say I love you all would be an understatement, I swear. Okay, nothing on the director's reports, you cannot change your mind now. Committee reports, Ms. Shepherd, yes, sorry.
The legislative session has ended, but we had a few casualties. First, the House failed to pass the bill that would allow undocumented students to attend in-state colleges and universities without paying out-of-state tuition. It failed by 1 vote. The Senate, it passed fairly
They didn't
easily
get
in
my
the
check?
Senate. Huh?
No, I'm just kidding, go ahead.
It passed fairly easy in the Senate, but like I said, it fell by 1 vote in the House. It's really a tragedy for these students, but I want to say a special thank you to Lee Harrell from TSBA, who fought hard for that bill, as he does for that bill and all the bills that matter to our kids. And secondly, the IEP voucher bill passed, which is another tragedy, in that this bill allows for children diagnosed with severe disabilities to receive tuition to attend a school other than their public zone school. It even allows for care at home. And all of this with very little, if any, oversight. And these children are our neediest and most fragile, and they truly deserve better than this. So we will have I believe, our last class call tomorrow morning. So if anyone wants to jump on that, you can.
I'm going to allow Mr. Pinkston to make a comment.
Thank you.
what do we
Just
do?
wanted to make a public announcement that the Community Engagement Committee, which meets monthly on the first Mondays of every month, will not meet during May or again in June. We're going to, as a board, attempt to preserve as much of our bandwidth, time-wise, as possible to devote to the search. So we will resume community engagement meetings in July and look forward to continuing then.
Okay. And I'm going to add also, and I guess I should have done this appropriately, I'm just moving a report. So, Ms. Bobo, if in the future the Director Search Committee needs to go under committee reports, because I don't want to ever forget that this is a committee of the whole. But we had a meeting, and Ms. Shepherd mentioned this earlier in part of her comments, with the HYA and 2 of our individuals supporting us through the search, as we talked through our leadership profile. So they presented the survey results that they've summarized. We have an electronic document that will be posted on the Director's Search page. So if you want to read the ins and outs and all the details associated with that report, it's going to be available to the public there. Some of the information that was provided as they summarize and cull through the data through their stakeholder sessions were the strengths as they believed and was shared by those stakeholders, also with challenges, issues, and concerns, and then some leadership characteristics that they're suggesting the board look for. The majority of them, I don't think any of them took any issue with, and so have been incorporated into our leadership profile. We also worked through what that posted document or verbiage for the posting of the open position should look like. I want to thank my board members for being here at 2 o'clock, getting hungry, and again, shame on you who came back with M&Ms and one tuna sandwich. But again, I thank you for that. And so in spite of, as Ms. Hunter pointed out, the myriad of distractions that exist in this district, and forget distractions, what we're responsible for on a daily basis. You guys have been highly participatory. I think we've had 100% participation in each meeting that we've had associated with the search, so kudos to you for that, and thank you very much. But again, the detailed report of the results of the stakeholder sessions and the online survey will be posted on the director's search page. Our next meeting is on not this Thursday, but the following Thursday, the 14th of May, where I believe we'll start speaking more in detail, and so I do have to reach out to the individual we talked about, Will, to talk about what our public engagement with the finalists, what we would like to see that look like, and mapping that process out, and then getting with HYA to see how we work through making that happen. All right, and so now we're into announcements. That's been moved on the reports because y'all don't know how to make announcements. So here we go, starting with Ms. Hunter. All righty, Dr. Brannon? Ms. Spear?
Yes, thank you. In collaboration with Vanderbilt University, Metro Schools offered a seminar recently on self-healing community as part of self-healing communities as part of our SEL program. Dr. Robert Anda talked about the biology of stress and the biology of hope. He said that life experiences make a major difference in their child's trajectory in learning, in school, and in life. Dr. Anda presented detailed brain research that talked about how stress affects the brain and the mind, and stress leads to social, emotional, and cognitive impairments. Consequences of adversity and stress get passed on from generation to generation. The most important thing kids need who have been affected by adverse childhood experiences is, number one, to feel loved. Number two, to experience intimacy with trusted adults. We're learning so much through our social and emotional learning opportunities, and we appreciate the collaboration we have with Vanderbilt University. This year, 50 teachers, which is about 8% of our Metro teachers, earned the prestigious Blue Ribbon Teacher Award. Congratulations to Judy Blackwelder from Glencliff High School, one of only 10 high school teachers who received the award. Another high school teacher was Jennifer Rice from Hunters Lane. Jared Amato was from Jerry Baxter Middle School. So the fact that a teacher from a priority school was named a Blue Ribbon Teacher dispels the myth that there are no quality seats in priority schools. Carrie Cowan from Joelton Elementary, Teresa Jones from Dan Mills, Diane Winstead from Old Center, Nikki Rager from Goodlettsville Middle, Allison Borger from Lytton Middle, Jennifer Hurst from Bailey STEM Magnet, Diane Simmons from Gateway. The Blue Ribbon Teachers Program was initiated in partnership with the Nashville's Agenda Steering Committee with support from the Nashville Public Education Foundation. The 50 award recipients will be honored at a formal reception at the Vanderbilt Chancellor's residence in May, and each will receive a $1,000 cash prize. TSU, in cooperation with Metro Schools, is offering a 2-week residential Regent Summer Math program for students in Metro high schools. This will occur July the 12th through the 24th for rising 10th and 11th graders. The program is free, but space is limited. For more information, parents can contact Dr. John Robinson at TSU. I was invited this week to proctor the TCAP test at Pennington Elementary in Miss Marissa Borden's 4th grade class of 22 bright students. 2 70-minute periods were devoted to reading tests, and they were separated by 20 minutes of recess. The classrooms were devoid of any writings on the walls. Even students' names had to be covered up or taken down. No words or numbers could be displayed. Even the clock had to be hidden from students' view for fear of using the clock to solve a problem. The majority of students in Ms. Borden's class completed the first segment of the test in only 30 minutes, although 70 minutes were allocated. Students were required to stay in their seats with only a piece of paper at their desk and to occupy themselves for 40 minutes of sit and stare. Only 3 students were still working at the hour mark. The other students sat lifeless and bored. One student wrote a list of words. On further examination, I could tell she was writing adjectives that described herself. And she asked me how to spell acrobatics. But I was afraid, even though her booklet had already been taken up, I was afraid to give her that information because last year we fired a teacher for a similar infraction. I'm not against achievement tests, but I am opposed to demanding that some of our most talented 9 and 10-year-old children are held captive for up to 40 minutes after completing a portion of the test and not even allowed to read a book. This completes my announcements.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Last month, it was announced for the 6th straight year in a row that the MNPS budget, led by CFO Chris Henson, was awarded the Meritorious Budget Award for Excellence in Budget Presentation from the Association of School Business Officials. Kudos to you, Mr. Henson, and to your team for a job well done. Thank you. And I would like to say congratulations to Stephanie Spear for being elected the Parent Advisory Council President. She did a very good job as the PAC President for the McGavitt Cluster, and I know that she'll continue that tradition. She's already published the meeting dates for the PAC meetings for next year. And this is a spoiler alert. The Titans have selected Marcus Mariota as their number 2 Titans pick. Woohoo!
Mr. Pinkston, anything else?
Just two quick things. I want to say thank you to my friends Renata Soto, Stephen Zaralik, Whitney Weeks, Rob Jack, and others who are involved and active in Conexión Americas. And the reason I'm thanking them is because they did an outstanding job last week honoring the Glencliff High School Colts, and in particular, a group of students, first-generation Americans and first-generation college-goers, for their incredible achievements, and there was not a dry eye in the house, I promise. The other thing I want to do is say thank you to Mayor Dean for, and if Dr. Brown, if you'll allow me to say thank you to Mayor Dean for agreeing to fund the capital request for Overton High School. It's technically in Dr. Brannon's district, but I have some schools in the Overton cluster, and as many of you know, I'm an Overton alum, so thank you to the mayor, and I hope that the council will concur, and go Bobcats. Thanks.
Yes, Peters?
I went to the mayor's last day of the city address this morning, and Dirk Bentley was there, so y'all missed that if you weren't there. But I do want to thank Mayor Dean for funding our operating budget, for recommending that, as well as $131 million for capital, which does include Overton, MLK, and then planning money for 3 other high schools, Hillsborough, Hillwood, and NSA. So it's taking our 5 high schools that have really needed a lot of TLC, and we're getting them on the map to get that process started. So big thank you to Mayor Dean and his administration for doing that. There's also a special moment. He honored Dr. Rocher very well and ended up with a standing ovation. So it was a great day.
I just want to bring notice that I will carry a motion at the next business meeting to terminate the appeal in the SEIU MOU case.
Just do what?
To terminate the appeal in the SEIU MOU case.
Yeah. And so finally, just want to say, guess what? Tomorrow is May 1st. It's graduation time. So I think this is just about everybody's favorite time of the year. We have our graduations covered. So thank all of you for taking time out to do that and helping to celebrate with our students as they take that final walk across the stage to culminate their time with us here in MNPS. And so, Ms. Frobe?
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
We do have a teacher appeal hearing.